Bridging the Gap. Nyomi Banks, the goddess. Tune in. Hey, yo, Black, where we at? Elements. Got a problem? What's the issue? Ask Nyomi for advice, she will bless you. Is it sex, love, or relationships? If your spirits are down, you can get a daily uplift. Just listen every word that she speaks. Setting trends with hashtags for every day of the week. Hashtag motivational Mondays, testimonial Tuesdays. I've been listening for the last 2 days. Wet Willie or Wisdom Wednesdays. Either way, the conversation gon' be lengthy. It's not hearsay. This is her way. You know she'll keep you thirst trapping on a Thursday. 4 days down, I'll talk about the number 5 day. Never coy, she always keeps it freaky on Fridays. Spiritual on Saturdays with sessions in the morning. Still uplifting and inspiring you all in. Being the goddess that she is, she keeps you all in. Formed on soul searching Sundays, just call in. If you misinformed, come get the facts. Fortunate for you, she's looking to bridge the gap. Yes, she was a porn star, but she's more than that. She's a certified specialist teaching us how to act. By the end of the show, we'll agree to disagree, but be good to each other and ourselves and keep it sexy. Yeah. Tune in every week to Ask Nyomi. Bridging the Gap with Nyomi Banks and Dog Pound Mike. Don't miss it. Tune in.
All right. Hey, my sexy people. How is it going? It's your girl, D Goddess, Nyomi Banks here on Ask Nyomi Bridget the Gap podcast. This is where we talk about love, sex, relationship, cultural differences, and so much more while bridging the gap between them all and teaching the world on sex, language, love, and spiritual uplifting. So how are my BTG crew? What's going on? And Dog Pound Mike, what's going on, baby?
It's all good. It's all good now.
All right, I am so excited. We have a very special guest, and I'm going to tell you once we, introduce her to come on. I'm going to share something with her that truly she came as a vision to me a few weeks before, and I'm going to share it with you. But what I want to do first is I want to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back, and then we're going to talk to Dr. Tina Sellers. And when I say I had a chance to listen and read both of her books. I'm almost finished with the Sex God in the Conservative Church one. I'm almost finished with that one, but I had a chance to actually read both of them, and I'm finishing the second one. But they're very great books. Kind of something that I wish that I had when my kids were younger, to kind of help me with moving. But I'm talking too much from that. Let's do this. Let's take a break. Let's come back, and then we're going to introduce. And let me tell you something, y'all. We got company tonight. So I want y'all to be on your best behavior, but don't be afraid to ask no questions, all right? It's your girl, D Goddess, here on Ask Nyomi Bridging the Gap podcast. We will be right back. Hey, my sexy people, this is your girl, The Goddess Nyomi Banks, and guess what? We have our first nomination. Yes, Urban X Award has nominated us for Popular Adult Podcast and Radio Show. So go on over to urbanxvoting.com/voting and cast your votes. Y'all, this is our first one. BTG crew, we are moving up, we are growing, we are elevating, and I want to thank you all that have continued to support us throughout this year. Go cast your votes now. And remember to always keep it sexy. Hey, my sexy people, it's your girl, The Goddess Nyomi Banks. And I finally did it. I've written my first book. Well, actually, it's the living journal. It's called Good Morning, My Sexy People. Well, I share my stories in different posts, but help a healing workbook for you. So it's 90 days to kick off your healing living journey. Pre-purchase now. Go to AskNyomi.com and hit shop. Listen. All right. Well, welcome back. It's your girl, The Goddess Nyomi Banks here on Ask Nyomi Bridging the Gap podcast. Did your guys go cast your votes? Did you cast them? All right. Well, Dog Pound Mike, you ready for this?
I'm ready.
You got your pen and your papers ready?
I'm taking notes.
BTG crew, do you got your pens and paper ready? I'm waiting for y'all to say yes, yes, yes. Yes, 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 yes. All right, now I have the beautiful, and I'm going to make sure that I do not butcher her name, but it's Dr. Tina Sellers. She's a licensed sex and gender feminist psychotherapist, a best-selling author, professor, a media personality that expertise spans through spirituality, intimacy, parenting, medicine, and so much more. And I want you guys to give a round of applause for Dr. Tina Sellers. Hi, beautiful.
Hi, beautiful. Good to be here with
How are
you.
you? How are you?
I'm
And
really well. I'm really great. Thanks. Yep.
thank you. First of all, I want to tell you thank you so much for coming on our show, and just you get ready to share your story with us, and just really teach us a lot here on Bridging the Gap podcast on Ask Naomi. And so I want to start off by telling you this little story. So myself and my family, we were on our way to Florida. And we go through the Clear. I don't know if anybody ever traveled through Clear, but when you travel through Clear, Clear is like a pre-check TSA, but they take our fingerprints. And so I go and I put my fingerprints down, and a picture comes up of a white woman with my name, my birthday, and everything. So I'm like, wait, this is not me. Like, what is going on here? So I'm looking at this little white lady. I'm like, what is this? This is not me. So they come and they're trying to help me. So we're there for like 45 minutes. 45 minutes. And I'm like, okay, what is this? And I'm big on signs. I'm very big on that. So I'm like, okay, there's something to this. I don't know what it is, but let me get to Florida, let me get to this wedding, and it'll be all right. So I get there the next morning. I wake up. I do my morning meditation and prayer. And as I'm sitting there, this vision of this white lady come again, but it's not that same white lady. It's another white lady. Her face is more rounder. Her hair is a little darker, like a more of a dirty blonde, type of hair. And I'm like, okay, who is this lady? Who is this white lady? I was like, who is this lady? So fast forward, I finally could get home, and I'm in my room again. I'm praying and meditating. I'm doing all of that, and your face come up again. Mind you, I've never seen you. I've never heard from you a day in my life. Literally 2 weeks later, your assistant or whoever does the booking for you reached out to me, and he said that I think she will be a great for your show. He sent me your Hope EPK, and when I opened it and I started crying because I saw your face, and I was like, oh my God. Like, and when I started reading your work, and I was like, oh my God. Because in January, I did like a mini conference here in Las Vegas for AVN weekend. It's all about healing through spirituality and sexuality. And I'm came from the adult entertainment side of it, but I've also had work in other things. But it's more of me going through my healing process. I knew that both of these two entities are a part of our spirit and our soul, but we were taught that they do not supposed to be in the same space, in the same realm. And so when I read that, I was like, oh my God, this is something that I prayed for. I prayed to just send me somebody that can help me, guide me through this in a manner that I need the world to see this as, so can be a part of this healing process for it. So with that saying, you were meant to be here, girlfriend.
I love it. And I love it when those kinds of things happen. I'm a real believer in that too.
Yes.
So this is exciting.
Yes. All right. So let me ask you this. My very first question is, I was going to start on the parenting first, but no, I want to start on the sex god and the conservative church. What actually brought you to write that book?
Yeah, that is quite the question. In many ways, I'm sort of taking on the church. I'm challenging the empire Christian Church of the United States.
Mm,
And that I never intended to do that. But I was teaching at a university in their graduate school in a marriage and family therapy program. And I started teaching there in the early 90s. And one of the courses that I'd been teaching from the beginning was the Graduate Human Sexuality course, which is a required course for licensure if you're going to be a marriage and family therapist.
mm,
So it's a quarter course, it's 10 weeks. You can't cover everything that therapists definitely need to know. So I was thinking, what are the main things I can cover in these 10 weeks? But also in putting assignments together, I'm a real believer that therapists are only ever as good as they know their own stories, where they begin and end, right? And the other person begins and ends. So I would have my students write their sexual autobiographies. I would
Mm,
give them like 70 questions. People hear that and they're like, well, I can't even imagine. But in America, where we don't have comprehensive sex education, people don't have a narrative. What they have is, gosh, I remember getting in trouble when I was 5, or I remember my first kiss, or I remember whatever, but it's not a narrative. And I really needed them to know what their legacy was so
mm,
that they knew where they began and ended. So I would give them lots of questions and I'd say, these questions are not here for you to answer one by one. They're for you to see the arc,
mhm,
right? Like, tell me, where did you learn about what affection was, what touch was, what, connection is, and walk me through your childhood, your adolescence, your adulthood. And these papers would be anywhere from 10 to 30 pages long. And, for the most part, people are describing a pretty common range of experience,
mm,
like when they became interested in whatever. But around the year 2000 or so, I started to notice a pretty dramatic increase in the amount of self-hatred that
mm,
were in these narratives, the amount of sort of disgust with self, and the amount of naivete about that their curiosities were normal and their behaviors were normal and their desires were, fell in the range of common for those different ages. But the way they felt about themselves was just dramatically different. So I didn't know initially what I was seeing. It
mm.
took me a little while. I had to ask many, many more questions. And I like, what's happening in culture that I'm missing? And what I finally realized was that I was hitting the first wave of students that had hit their adolescence in the mid 90s, when we had really begun pushing abstinence education in the United States through the 80s and into the 90s. We had dramatically increased the kind of conservatism in our evangelical churches across the United States and even in other countries as well.
Mhm.
And in that idea around sexuality, it wasn't just don't have sex until marriage. What it was don't think about sex, don't want sex,
Mhm.
don't do any touching, because if you do, you're going to ruin your life, ruin your relationship with God, ruin your future relationships. And meanwhile, in culture, we had this big danger thing going on because of AIDS, right? That had started in the mid 80s. So I was really hitting students that had been marinated in this for a while, and it was showing up in their lives in this just massive self-hatred and really ignorance about themselves. And
Mm,
it literally broke my heart. Like, I would go into my chair's office and I would cry because I'm like, I just spent the weekend reading 10 papers, 20 papers, 30 papers, and these students are just hurting so badly on the inside, and they have no idea that they're not the ones that hurt themselves, right? The
yeah.
culture did. So it took me a while, about 2000, and I started speaking about it, talking about it, because I couldn't find anybody else that was talking about it. And I was saying things like, I'm seeing signs in people's lives of childhood sexual abuse, but they haven't been abused in the traditional sense. But
Mm,
they're showing up with all the same symptoms, as well as pelvic pain disorders, erectile dysfunctions, things that you don't usually see in 20-year-olds.
mhm.
And so in 2006, I was asked to write an article at an online journal called The Other Journal, Intersection of Theology and Culture. And I said, gosh, if I'm going to write this article, I'm just going to tell you what I'm seeing.
Right.
And I don't know how your readers are going to feel about it, right?
Mm,
And so I wrote that, and the article was called Christians Caught Between the Sheets, How an Abstinence Only Ideology Hurts Us. And
okay.
I just told stories.
Mhm.
And I started hearing from people from around the globe, like literally around the globe. Like, I haven't heard anybody talk about this way. It's so compassionate. It's so kind. It's the way I've been feeling, whatever. So that was when I decided, okay, I'm going to start doing research and I'm going to write a book that's going to try to share the narrative. How did we get here in
Yeah.
America? What's been happening sociopolitically? And then how do we heal? And I asked the question, has it always been this way? Like, has there ever been anything like working with people whose histories are on the Judeo-Christian line, the Abrahamic line? Do we have anything to offer them? or is it just all kind of shame and don't, And so I did a really deep dive into Jewish writing and scripture, both wisdom scripture as well as the Talmud and the Torah. And I found some beautiful things that I had never heard before. And I
Mm.
thought, oh my gosh, we have something to offer people who are comfortable only on that line. They're not comfortable in other places. And then I talked about how you heal, because over those years, I just really worked with people on healing shame and healing religious sexual shame and trauma. And then in the end, I talked about here's some practices you can do if you want to integrate your sexuality and your spirituality, if that's important to you. So I wrote it both to people who experienced it, as you know, and I wrote it also to professionals, because
Mhm.
at that time, we didn't have anything to raise the cultural competency in professionals, which we needed to. So I thought, okay, I'm going to try to do both. So I did, but it took a long time. But that's how that book got written. I just felt it needed to be, too many people needed to know that they were beautiful and wonderful and everything about them was a gift. And they just needed to learn to manage it so it supported their life and it supported other people's lives. Because
Yeah.
that's bad,
Yeah. I love that. It's like even in the beginning of the book of the sex god, and I love how you went back in scripture wise and in different things and even talk about marriage or how that it really wasn't marriage. Marriage really wasn't a thing back then.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know that and understand because everything has been put in such a box, like an exact box that people don't see outside of that at all. And it's something that I used to say all the time. It's like the very thing that has brought us on this earth, that created us, is so special, is so demonized. Why is there not anyone out there that can educate us, even at a young age, to where it is not shameless? So now I'm telling you, when I saw that, I literally cried because I'm like, oh my God. I remember when my girls were 10 years old. And I remember I used to have a slumber party to where I would talk to them about sex. So I would, give it permission slips to their parents. And some of the parents would come in and sit with us that night. And we would talk about, that so they can know what it is. And the only reason why I knew to do that, because I knew how it was so shamed on me and my family on certain things. And it was just so ironic that I ended up in the adult industry, but I ended up in there when I was like 30 years old. I was a grown woman, doing other things. And now I understand why my path is what it is,
Yeah.
and why I'm here. And again, I just want to thank you for just writing this book, and even the Shameless Parenting book, because we're going to get on that one too, because a lot of people don't have the language
Right.
to be and or the attitude to be able to speak to their child. But not only in that book are you doing with the kids, but you also helping them to heal their shame of what
Right.
was taught to them.
Hmm.
And so that's a beautiful thing. So my next question to you is, even with writing the sex god, um and the conservative church, what was the putback for you? What was the hardest thing for you to do to truly get it out? I guess I really want to know, where was your mental at that moment?
Where was my what?
Your mental.
My brain, where was my head? Yeah. It took so long to write, and I was gathering so much information. And really, so many things, when they come to fruition and you look back, you think, oh, the timing was perfect. Right. But as I was writing it, I'm thinking, oh, can't I work on this faster? But I was raising kids and working full time. I was doing so much. But it was all in its right time, because at the very beginning, when I was gathering the research and doing my initial first draft of the book, and I wrote 3 drafts of the book, it took a while to get it the way that it needed to be. Um, I was still really sad and angry for people, right?
Mm,
And I needed time to work through that, because I didn't want the book to be that way. And so
right.
my very first rendition of the book was actually pretty academic, and in part because that's the kind of writing I'd been doing, and I had a friend at the University of Minneapolis, and he's like, do you mean to be doing this, writing an academic? And I'm like, no, I don't, and he said, yeah, you need way more stories, girlfriend. You need to like pull it back, and so I'm like, okay. And I actually put it on the shelf for several years and just ran retreats and listened to what people told me they responded to. And that actually really help me understand things better, help give me time to sort of process through, but also to help me become more compassionate towards the people who were trying to raise their kids well. They were scared to death and they were just inadvertently passing their shame down, but they weren't meaning to, right? It
Mhm,
is their intent was good, but the fallout was not. And
mhm.
so I needed that time, and I could see that by the time the book came out, it still was the first book like it, even though it took so long to write. But it had a kind of softness to it now
Yeah,
where we could really include people and invite people in a way that hopefully they wouldn't feel shamed by it, but they would feel understood and they
yeah.
would feel hopeful and they would have direction and guidance on how to move forward in their own healing and journey. And so I just think there was a kind of grace that was spread over me over all of that time that it took that long, you know?
Yeah. What I love is if hearing you say even about the grace period, but also you were patient with it.
Mm.
And even in the writing and of it, you can even tell with the stories that was written, and even you, because I do Audible. I do Audible because when I'm working around the house or in my garden,
Yeah.
I'm listening to it so I can even hear the softness in your voice as you are reading or explaining what the book is all about. And another part that touched me, it was about more of couples. When you're talking, when you were in there with the couples, and I'm like, oh my God, this book is so good because these are some of the things that I've learned in some of my teachings that I speak here on the podcast. And when you say spirituality and sexuality, people go like from here to here with it. They like take it so far that they never can see the middle ground of where it fuse and where it bridges together. And you do that so well in this book. You
Thank
really do. And when I say this, listeners, you guys actually you do have to get this book. And if you can go on my website, axnaomi.com, and there's a link there that you guys can go and get the book. Get this one. We're gonna talk about the shameless parenting too. But for this book, and why I'm saying is because I know I got a lot of people in here that are parents too. But you have to do your healing within yourself first before you can do any healing with anybody else. Remember that. Remember, I always speak that. And with that book, is good. This will be a book that I'll read over and over again, that I'll listen to over and over again. So it is definitely a must do. So I want you to do this for me. If there's anything that you can give to our listeners right now out of that book, what would it be?
you. Well, I kind of want to echo what you said about doing your own healing.
Mhm.
You know, our responses to the world, to the people that we love in our lives, come out of our places of growth and healing, but also our places of woundedness.
Mm.
And then we'll probably talk about this more when we talk about the parenting book, but I really have come to believe that the very first shame that most people experience is a sexual shame. It's a body shame because if you've been around littles at all, they're a year old, 15 months old, and they're finding their genitals. They know how to work their hands now, they know how to grab things, and they discover their genitals. And it's a great day because it's a lovely, wonderful, fantastic part of your body. But if the history of the people who are raising the child or around the child is filled with shame, then their first automatic response often is to slap their hand away or say, oh, gross, icky, or something like that that scares the child. That is going to happen hundreds and hundreds of times before they have the kind of memory that sticks, like about 5.
Yeah,
And so it's hard for us to appreciate, I think, how many moments of shame are pre-verbal and
yeah,
then in those toddler young years. So it's way deep in our DNA. And so I'm often saying the same thing that you are, Naomi, like do yourself the gift and blessing of healing yourself, coming to understand why you're reactive about certain things and whatever, and just be curious about that. And then go find what you need to heal that
yeah,
because it's going to open so much liberation and freedom in you to just sit and be with yourself with kindness and love and sit and be with others with
yeah.
patience and kindness and love. And so yeah, I would say yeah, I think the book is valuable for that reason. I think it walks through and gives people a context that they often didn't have, so they are less likely to shame themselves, and then gives them opportunities to do some healing,
Yeah.
and some guidance on how to do some healing. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely, I agree with that. I'm just upset that I didn't get to finish but I'm going to finish the rest before I'm sitting here before you. But otherwise, it is, guys, it is an amazing book. It's a lot of things in there that you can truly learn, not only about yourself, but how to even respond and treat other people through it. There's right now the course that I've created, and it's called Falling in Love with Self. It's discovering your inner bliss, and that is me, where we can't have faith, that we cannot really love anyone until we really truly love ourselves. And if we want to stop in these toxic relationships that we are in, and we creating toxic children and toxic people, we have to find that love within ourselves, and that faith. We can't have faith in God if we don't have faith in ourselves. And so that is why I created, and this is my first course that I'm doing, that I created, that for this, and I'm gonna say I created it because I had help from my spiritual guides. Like when I'm telling you, I went through my shadow work and did all of those things to get to where the point that I am now. And just really, this has really just get a confirmation that I am on the right path. This is just giving me a confirmation that my thought of spirituality and sexuality and healing through that moment, that was not my perversion way of people were saying that I'm trying. You understand? And I just want people to truly go and get this book, even if you have to get it on Audible. You guys, like, truly. And I believe you are a psychotherapist too, so you're therapy in that manner. So if there's anything that I can't do, she's definitely open. Here I go, open to take clients too, for that matter. You understand, that has been there longer and has done the work, through it all, through her research and everything like that. But what I want to do, I want to take a quick break. And then we're going to come back. And then I want to talk about the shameless parenting on that one, because I want to know where that came from. And I want to get a little personal. I'm going to ask you some things. All right. All right, it's your girl D Goddess Naomi Banks here on Ask Naomi Bridging That podcast. We will be right back.
It's actually great
Mm-hmm.
because, towards the end, I was like, man, I really just want my body to myself,
Mm-hmm.
because I felt like my body belonged to Manuel, to Marcus,
Mm.
to Julius, So it's
Mm-hmm.
like I felt like I wanted my body to myself for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty great.
That's Naomi Bridging the Gap. This is where we talk about love, sex, relationship, cultural differences. Hey, my sexy people, this is your girl, the Goddess Naomi Banks. And I just wanted to talk about something a little serious real quick. Right now in this world, sex trafficking is at an all-time high. And I want you ladies to be especially aware when you are out, and pay attention to certain things. Now, there's a list of things right here that is going around social media, and I just wanted to pay special attention to it and just share it with you. So as I always say, always keep it sexy, but always be safe. Hey, my sexy people, this is your girl, the Goddess Naomi Banks, and guess what? We have our first nomination. Yes, Urban X Award has nominated us for Popular Adult Podcast and Radio Show. So go on over to urbanxvoting.com/voting and cast your votes. Y'all, this is our first one. BTG crew, we are moving up, we are growing, we are elevating, and I want to thank you all that have continued to support us throughout this year. Go cast your votes now. And remember to always keep it sexy. All right, well, welcome back. It's your girl, the Goddess Naomi Banks here on Ask Naomi Bridging the Gap podcast. I am here with my special guest, Dr. Tina Sellers, best-selling author of Shameless Parenting and Sex God in the Conservative Church, is here with me. How are you? I thank you again. Are you enjoying yourself?
Oh, this is so fun. I'm just loving it. I'm loving spending this time with you and talking about my favorite stuff.
Thank you. Dr. Mike, how are you liking this?
Well, you know something. This makes me feel special because I grew up and I went to Catholic school, a Catholic high school, and it was an all male school, but the girls' school was down the street. So the feelings I have about the girls, I ain't ashamed of them no more. You
Oh
know,
my God.
I feel like I was in the right place, right, doctor?
Oh,
All right. But I did say we were going to go back. We was going to talk about it, but it was a question that I wanted to ask you.
yeah.
Gender, gender feminist. So when I read that, I was like, what is that? And I want you to describe what that is to my listeners.
Yeah. So I'm just a real believer that people are uniquely beautiful how they are and how they come into the world and how they grow and develop in time. And one of the things that the gift of the work that I've done over the last 30 years has shown me is that there's so much more diversity in the world than we often speak about in the way that we define things in culture.
Mhm.
And so I think about just how we need to celebrate the humanity of people and become more curious about what makes you you,
Yeah.
and so that's, people with all different kinds of backgrounds and ethnicities and genders and experiences and all of it. And so for me, when I say gender psychotherapist or gender feminist psychotherapist,
Mhm.
it's a way of saying I honor the brilliance and the essential creation of people.
Okay.
And I don't need to stick them in the box, but I do want to know them. I do want to be curious about them and learn from them, where their life is different from mine, their experience is different than mine, their background is different than mine, and my life has been made so much richer by entering those conversations and relationships. And I've been taught so much. So it's kind of a stance that I have in the world, actually.
Okay. So I had a whole bunch of questions on for both of the books, but I want to do this question before we hop to the shameless. I got some of your time, right? To be have. So how can individuals navigate the tension between the sexual identities and the expectations of the conservative religious community? Because you have a lot of people that are in church and they're afraid to kind of step out of that
Mhm.
box or what. Now, what would be your advice to them, or how can they be able to do that?
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant question. If we look across the landscape of churches, and I'll speak about the Christian church, but we've got other churches too, but look across the landscape, and what you're going to find now is a lot of different ways in which people are gathering and worshiping and believing and whatnot. And I would say, if you're not in a community that can see you well and
Mm,
honor you, be curious about you, see you as somebody who can contribute your own gifts and thrive in that community, then it just might not be the right community for now.
mhm,
We've got other communities that allow for more people maybe that are like you or like you see yourself. So
mhm,
I believe that we're meant to thrive. I believe that we're meant to, like you spoke of, love yourself, value yourself so that you can love others, right?
mhm,
You've got to start there. Well, you first also need to be in a community that wants to see, know, love, and accept you. And that's really how you create space, I think, for the love of the divine, the love of God to come in, is that you need to feel like you are seen, known, loved, and accepted. So if your community isn't able to do it, if it's too white or it's too straight or it's too whatever, then find that community that can see you and says, you are beloved. You are beloved. And how do I support you to grow and thrive? Because I
mm.
think that's where we all belong. And
Right,
it's not always the same place for every person.
right, right. Well, thank you for that one. All right, so we're gonna talk about the shameless parenting. Like I said, I wish I would have had this book, but I still have a 10-year-old, but I wish that I really would have had this book with my older two. And even though I thought I did a pretty good job of them not being able to shame themselves, for things, but I still had the community of people around me that will help to put that shame on. You understand? And if you can, with my audience is tell them first of all, how did you come up with that? Like, I want to know, did you shame your kids, or was you shamed as a child?
So here's the interesting story. The short answer to that is, after writing Sex, God, and the Conservative Church and hearing from people as they were reading it, people would say to me, Tina, how do I not do to my kids what was done to me? I know I don't want to do that to them, but I don't know what to do. And I'm like, I got you. I've been teaching this to physicians and grad students forever. I'm happy to figure out, put it together in a way that will be useful to you. But it really grew out of, and I talk about it a little bit in the book. I had the blessing of growing up in a Swedish immigrant home, and I have many generations of aunts and uncles and grandparents and cousins that grew up in a sex positive and sex informed, sexuality, relationship informed household. And so there never was a talk. It was just talked about, like you talk about brushing your teeth, or what recipe are you going to make, or whatever. And it wasn't just done by my parents, it was my grandparents and my aunts and my great aunts. And so I actually thought well into my 30s that every family was like this. And when I started teaching, I started to realize that I actually am the one that grew up in an odd family, and what I called a sound bite sex family. It was sound bites all the time, and that was a gift to me, but it took me a long time to even be able to reflect on it as a unique thing.
Mhm.
I felt very comfortable with bodies and sexuality. And I'm a Swede. I'm, 40 pounds heavy. I'm not a tall model looking person, but I still grew up in a family that was like, you have a body. Bodies are good. We take care of them. We honor them. We honor each other's. We help each other take care of our bodies, and you have to be in relationships where people are honoring you back and you're honoring them. It was just an ongoing
Yeah.
kind of conversation. So it was because of that my very first job, I was teaching junior high. I taught the sexuality in the junior high. And my next job after grad school was teaching in my grad school, and I taught the sexuality there. But it took a while for me to go, why am I comfortable with this when so many other people are not?
Right.
And that was really the answer, is that I just had this good fortune of growing up in this immigrant home that was like that.
Right. What really stood out to your book was right in the beginning, and actually you spoke about it before we went on break. Is about as a little kid, you really don't know what you're doing. You touching different parts of your body. I mean, these are discovery parts. You're like, oh my God, I got have that, or what is that?
Yeah.
And we know that there is a sensation in those feelings, for that. But I like how the tone that you said is that instead of us putting a negative thing on it, you teach them how, to embrace it, but not only know if they able to respect it themselves, then they're able to teach others how to respect it, and they know what is what. You understand what I'm saying? So
Absolutely.
yeah. So if because I'm talking now, so if you can explain that a little bit more. So let me say this, because when I used to be, I used to have a radio show at Playboy Radio,
Mhm.
and one of the questions that I used to ask, the guests or celebrities that used to ask, I used to ask, how old were you when you first started masturbating? Now,
Mhm.
I'm going to say this. When I started masturbating, I didn't start masturbating until I was 30 years old on camera.
Yeah.
Like, really.
Mhm.
But the ages that I heard, and I was like, wait, what?
Mhm.
I was truly shocked. Truly shocked. At that moment, I used to be like, wait, what?
Mhm.
And it was like, yeah. And I mean, and some got caught doing it, some was shamed in it, but I was amazed on how young or how common that young of an age was. I'm talking about 2, 3, 4, like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, I would say that most children discover, their hand ends up in their genitals, and they discover, and they're pre-verbal, or they're, pre-3, or 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. But remember what I said about, if you've got people around you that aren't comfortable with that, and you're finding it all the time, they're going to yell at you, and you're eventually going to stop, or you're going to go underground. You're going to do one of those two things. lots of people go underground, but there are many people who just stop, and they actually don't have much memory of experiencing anything. And it's not until they were intentional later, like I'm intending to move myself through my arousal cycle to orgasm or
Mhm.
whatever. And that's kind of different. And really, when kids are touching themselves, it's about comfort,
Mhm.
and it's not. I wouldn't apply the word masturbation to it because it's
Mhm.
an intent to comfort.
Yeah.
And many times, if we like have a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old that we see as doing that way much more than they were like last month or whatever, sometimes it's just an indicator that they have more anxiety. It's just like the
Mm.
one that's carrying their blanket longer,
Yeah.
or whatever, their comfort behavior, because it's very comforting. And I believe that's really part of how we're designed, that we come out of the womb seeking connection and pleasure. The breast milk isn't there, but we're rooting right towards that breast because of that smell and that touch. We are wired for connection and pleasure. And if you walk through the halls of an Alzheimer's unit, right, where people don't have memory,
Mhm.
they will still be seeking connection and pleasure too. We know that that's a challenge for people who work in Alzheimer's units and memory care units, you know? So I'm just a real, and if you're a toddler and you're not getting enough connection, right? Touch, we know that the kids can suffer neurological damage, right?
Mm.
So I think we are hardwired for connection and pleasure. We do it in different ways as
Yeah.
humans. Not everybody is sexual,
Yeah.
but we love that connection. We love that, just that touch, or be close to, I see that you get me, you understand. And I think that it's really comes out of that, and later we discover our arousal cycle, and we discover that if we work with it, we can go to orgasm. That's a brilliant, wonderful, amazing thing too. But that's often a little bit later as our hormones come on board and we're 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, somewhere in there. And then some people are like, okay, but I have to go underground with this, because if anybody knew, they would
Mm.
think I was perverted. And I'm like,
Right.
well, baby, you're not.
Yeah. Right. So it was a part of the book that you had read. It's about I guess, was it your neighbor or your best friend, and it was an incident, I believe, with your two daughters, and they were, I mean, your daughter and her daughter or something, and they were very quiet, the kids. And I just want, could you explain what that whole scenario was there?
Yeah. Yeah. So the kids were about 4, and one of the kids' bedrooms was off the kitchen, so not super far. And so it was my daughter and my goddaughter, and they're 6 weeks apart, and they were playing in the room. And the mom and I, who've been friends forever, we were cooking dinner. And then you know how it is, where all of a sudden you go, I haven't heard anything for a
Mm.
while. It's been a little too quiet. So we
Yeah.
kind of sneak around the corner and we open the door. The girls are just naked as noodles, and they have found my daughter's older brother's markers, and they have colored all over themselves and all over the walls. Right. And we're like, oh, look at that. Look at you. Whoop, into the tub we go, And I only to this day regret that I didn't stop and take a picture, because, of
Mhm.
course, they're both now in their 30s, and
Yeah.
one has a child of her own.
Yeah.
And it was so typical for that age, you know?
Yeah, but I like the healthy respond to it. You understand what I'm saying? It was a healthy respond to it versus a more, yelling and screaming, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" To make it, feel. And I think that's what I caught from there when I heard that, when I, from you reading the book. All right,
Yeah.
so here's a question that I have for you. So, what are some misconceptions of myth about shameless parenting that you addressed in your book?
Well, I think a lot of people don't understand the developmental tasks of the different ages,
Mhm.
so and it used to be that children's developmental information was really front and center in our conversations, in our socio-political conversations. They really haven't been for a number of years now. And so once you know what a child is typical, what I say is in their job description for this year, these ages, and I break the book down into 2-year increments, birth all the way to 18, then I'm saying, this is a time that, trying to understand that they have choice, that they have power. That's part of they're an individual. This is part of what they're going to do at this age, at age 4 or whatever. And so saying no or putting their foot down, that's part of them growing. It's not part of them trying to be awful. Also being very curious about their world and asking why, and understanding and wanting to understand their own bodies and really noticing roles in the family, like, so-and-so goes to work, but so-and-so doesn't, like, so what's that about? They're, and so I think that there are a lot of things actually in the different ages that many parents aren't aware is actually a sign of health and wellness, that they're curious in those ways. And what they're needing from you is to guide them, to provide them the education in those areas, and to help them feel equipped as they move to the next stage, and then equipped when they move from the next stage. So that's what I try to do in the book, is say, here's the typical tasks, emotional and cognitive tasks they're trying to do. Here's the relational tasks they're trying to accomplish. What they need from you is first to learn to be non-reactive. And if you notice that you're reactive, be curious about where that reactivity came from, because it came from somebody not knowing what to do with you. So do some writing about that, do some thinking about that, and then start to provide your child with the scaffolding that they need around what is going on for them. Kids have curiosities about gender roles, like 3, 4, 5 years old. And some kids won't feel like, the vast majority of kids are going to feel like their body matches them, right? But there are going to be some kids that don't. It's going to be important that we listen to them, right? And we're like, well, tell me more about what you think, like, they were assigned boy at birth, but they want to wear dresses and they want to be frilly. Okay, so tell me why you like that. And just inviting, again, this thing that says, I love you for who you are, and I'm here to learn about you, support you, help you be safe in the world, and all of that. So I try to provide parents with, here's what's going to happen, or tends to happen in these ages. Here's what they're going to need from you to feel equipped, to be able to protect themselves out in the world, to know what exploitation is and that kind of thing. I think it's around the 6-8 section of the book. I talk about online safety and how you teach that, and media literacy, because kids need that. And most of us didn't get that because we were living in a different online world, 20 years ago. But now it's very much a part of their life. And so they need something from their parents that sometimes the parents didn't get. I mean, I certainly didn't. And I've had to learn a lot of that too. So I think there's little things in each of the stages that can hopefully be really helpful to people.
Right. One thing that I did like that you said also is about with the age difference. I believe you was like, was it with 2 years apart, something like that, maybe 2, 3, like no more than that they should be in a playing space together like that, because the older ones can influence in a certain way that may be, and I want to make sure I'm saying this right, unhealthy. And if I'm not, please correct me or come and jump in and say, okay, well, this is what I meant, Naomi. But
yeah, that has to do with, we have a lot of people that are afraid of sexual abuse. What's sexual abuse, right? Well, sexual abuse has to do with a power differential between the person who's abused and the person who's doing the abusing. In other words, there's an age difference, there's a size difference, there's a cognitive difference. It's not the same thing as 2 5-year-olds being curious together. That's just curiosity, right? And so what I say in the book is, if kids are more than 18 months apart, then make sure there's supervision, because by the time we've got 18 months, then we may have some size differences, we may have some cognitive differences. And so the older one, because we want to try to get what we want, right? We're human, right? The older one may try to manipulate the younger one, and the younger one, loving the older one and thinking they're wonderful, may end up following, but doing something that later they wouldn't have wanted to do, right? And same with the older one, sort of enticing something that later they learn, gosh, that probably wasn't a good thing. So it really protects both of them for supervision to be there.
Yeah.
I can't tell you, Naomi, how many stories I've heard of sexual assault that occurred in families
Hmm.
amongst siblings
Hmm.
where, somebody was labeled a perpetrator and somebody was labeled a victim, but the system is what set it up for them because
Okay.
there was not the supervision. Kids are going to be curious. They
Yeah.
need the adults to be like, nope, you're not babysitting, or you're not in a closed room, or you guys are playing out here, to just help them keep themselves safe
Right.
and in a place where they have the freedom to say, I don't want to do that, or whatever. So yeah, it's important for people to understand what creates exploitive
Yeah.
situation. It's
Yeah.
not just the touch, because if they're the same age, it's
Yeah.
you know
And then you speaking that, I was just thinking of something that's like, I wish there were like, I know we have these different conventions, especially in an adult world. We have these different conventions, but it's something that I have a vision on doing, and it's about bridging the gap and bringing it all together, where there is a space, where there is a room where parenting could come in, and they can, say you're standing on stage and you're able to speak to them in a manner to where it's not of a shameless, but educating them on how to have the correct language and attitude to teach their children. You know what I'm saying? And
yeah.
so that way it can cut out the abuse. I remember having this conversation. We were at this party with this guy, and I was talking about, one of my things is, after I retire, is what I really want to focus on is truly educating, health wise, to make it where it's more healthy. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Where it's healthy, especially knowing I have 3 girls,
Mhm.
so knowing that they will be birthing children themselves. So
Mhm.
making sure that it's a healthy manner, but also knowing that I came from in one of the industry that I was a part of, you would say, exploitation.
Mhm.
When I looked at it more for me, I get a lot of couples, that talk to me about, certain things are making them comfortable with each other, with their language with each other.
Yes, yes,
Each
yes.
other, they're kind of shamed because it was always shame to them. So it's more of teaching them in that. But I had to go like another foot and say, well, where did this start from? Everything starts at home. And if we can do that in home, and I want to say correct that, but kind of mold that to where it's a more healthier feeling and emotion of what it is, then that'd be great. And then I thought about, I was raised in Christian Baptist church,
Mhm.
and so that is the biggest part of us is our religion and our spiritual. Well, I'm gonna say religion because
Yeah.
I'm more spiritual now than I am. And so if we take that part and we take that spirituality in it and know about the emotions of our spirit, of our soul, and the energies that's in there, and
Mhm.
combine them all together. And I guess I'm like, we need to create something like that,
Yeah.
Dr. Tina Saller.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have so much work to do, and so much healing can come from doing that work, and
Okay.
it's just exciting when you think about it, because as people heal and become more shameless themselves, then they have different relationships, not only with their own children, but with other people in their community. I
Yeah.
mean, healing starts to flow out
Yeah.
from there. I was thinking of a story as you were saying, like finding the words. My two older ones um, or the two that I was with the most
Mhm.
raising them are 5 years apart. So I have an older boy and a younger girl. And I can remember one time when my son said to his sister, and I overheard it, hey, I'll give you this sucker, this lollipop, if you
Mhm.
want to clean my room. And I went to him and I said, hey, dude, I said, would that feel fair if she were the older one and you were the younger one and she said that to you? And he goes, no. And I said, well, then that is called an abuse of power. You are older,
Hmm.
taller, smarter, you know more now, and she thinks you walk on water. But that does not make it right if you can manipulate her. And
Mm.
I need for you to be responsible to the power that you have with her, that
Mm.
you are going to treat her with kindness and respect. And I would be saying the same if she had a younger person, but you're going to have that advantage your whole life. And as a white male who's likely to be tall, you're
Mhm.
going to have this a lot in your life. And I need you to be aware of your power so you do not abuse it with people. So we had that conversation in many forms as he was
Mhm.
growing up, because I believe that men are responsible for what they say and do. Women are not responsible for what men's bad choices. In other words, often in the church, we see, and in culture, if a woman is assaulted, we say, well, what were you wearing? What
Yeah.
were you
Yeah.
doing, right? And I'm
Mhm.
like, no, 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 no. You are responsible. I don't care if people around you are naked and masturbating. You
Mhm.
are responsible for what you say and do always, period. You
Right.
know, and your power, you're going to often have more power in the room. You need to be responsible to that. So we started that conversation way early on because power is part of how we exploit across the board.
Yeah.
And I wanted my kids to be aware of this.
Yeah. That's okay. So let me ask you the question. So the way that the world is now, and when you have the LGBTQ um, it feels like it's a war going on between them and women. Can I be very honest? Well, more of the trans women and women, that has become a battle, a war battle at this moment. And I guess because I guess the word cis, and I'm asking you this because you
Sure.
are gender feminist.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna be honest, for me, I felt like, no, I am a female. I was born a female, so I shouldn't have to have any other tag of saying cis on that. So if
Yeah.
you can explain to me, um, what is that? I mean, you know what? I'm trying to be so respectful as possible that I
Oh,
can't
honey, I
be, because I
know.
have friends that are trans and they like, no, we're trans women. That's who we are. We don't, for that. But I need to know, doctor.
Yeah, yeah. So, we are in a time of so many words and so many labels and so many people that have been, underground in the margins forever, trying to come forward and say, I count too,
Yeah.
and I get that. Believe me, I think it's a good thing. So cis just means that I feel like I match what I was born with. I
Mhm.
was born female and I feel female. I was a tomboy the whole time I grew up. I was the tight end receiver of my fourth grade football team, but I have always felt like a girl, you know? And so I would identify as I'm cisgendered. Um, but there are plenty of people who are from their beginning points, they felt different than what was assigned, and they have had to work really hard to live into the truth of who they are.
Mhm.
And they will say, I'm trans feminine or I'm trans masculine.
Mhm.
They're not trying to say, I know what it is because I didn't get to get born into the body I wanted to. So I don't get to say, I know what that's like. Like you kind of got it nice, but
Mhm.
I can tell you what it's like for me
Mhm.
as a trans masculine or trans feminine person to have done this life. I have a very, very dear friend who was a part of what do you call it? Starting church planting across the United States forever, and tall, very powerful white male
Okay.
that had felt since they were small that they were a woman and kept kind of waiting for something to happen. They got
Mm.
to a place much later in life after children and everything where they felt like if they couldn't live authentically, it wasn't going to be worth living. And so their wife said, I'm not willing to lose you. I need you to deal with this. I need for you to do whatever. And we as a family will navigate it.
Okay.
And that was a very difficult, very, very difficult thing. And so she did. She transitioned. It was very hard on everybody. She's now been trans feminine for a decade probably now, and has written a best-selling book, and I think a movie's going to come out on her. She's got a few different TED Talks. Her name is Paula Stone Williams. Just wonderful. But it's important, I think, for people to hear some of their stories, because it's when you grow up, especially like she did a long time ago, where there was no space at all, none, you just don't get to be you. And so any place where we get to feel like we get to be ourselves and be that fully and get understood.
Mhm.
We need to see that as not just privilege, but a really lovely, wonderful thing. And there are some people that don't get to do that. Maybe we'll never get to do that. We'll get killed if they come out for it, And so it's a huge struggle. And their stories are important for us to hear, I think. Now, you mentioned something about sort of this struggle between the two. One of the things I want to say with that is I think right now, just in general, we are having, especially in the more liberal spaces where some of these conversations are happening, we're having a hard time having conversations in a way that is respectful. And we're doing a lot of assuming malice, making a decision about somebody and cutting them off or
Mhm.
erasing them.
Mhm.
And while I understand what it is to be upset and to not like all of that or whatever, I also feel like as a people, we need to each be trying our best to do better in whatever area. And that means having conversations. So I think of us living in a color wheel of people,
Mhm.
color wheel of time. Now we can see so many more colors than we've ever seen before. But if we're going to find a way to do that, we've got to also be able to listen to ourselves, listen to each other, and then find our ways forward. We all have some really important stories to tell.
Yeah.
And those of us that have been, I think, really privileged, we need to shut up and listen more,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I think some of that is what's going on. It's kind of the cancel culture stuff. And I'm just one to say, let's just try to be gracious and keep talking and not assume malice. And I know there's pain. Believe me, I know there's pain. Um,
Yeah.
but let's keep moving ourselves forward.
Thank you. That was good. Even when you were speaking, I kept thinking about the 4-4. The 4-4 for me is, I don't know if you ever read the book, The Four Agreements.
Yes. Yeah.
That is an amazing book. I've read that book several times. And I use that in my daily life. I truly do. So as you were talking and about the assumptions and things, and it was funny because as you were saying something, I started to assume something and I had to kind of check myself for a moment there. And then I was just saying to myself, the 4-4, like, oh my God. But then I'm thinking about being in the context of that conversation and just watching things unfold online, in media, on social media. And it's like if we really, really sit in and really listen to each other and not take things personal,
Yeah.
and that it's not about you, and not assume, but to ask questions to find them. Yeah, you just gave it to me. All right, I got it. You understand? So it went to that motion with me, and it's like even with Dwayne Wade and his daughter,
Mhm.
and her going through her transformation and stuff, like, and it's been a big thing because they feel like she's too young to make that choice or decision,
Mhm.
on that. For you, being that that's something that you do counsel, for anybody that's on here that possibly their child is going through that, what would
Mhm.
be your advice to them?
Yeah. There's a lot to learn again about how gender emerges in the human,
Mhm.
naturally emerges in the human. And I think, gosh, parents, if you haven't been around this, then you can't expect yourself to know. There is a really good book called Where's My Book? That's written by an MD on working with trans kids and families. And
Mhm.
it's really an education. It's just going to teach you all about all of it and take the time to learn. You didn't do anything. Your child is blooming in front of you, being just a brilliant gift to the world. And all of our children, and I don't know anybody I'm talking to, your children are going to be unique. They're not going to be exactly what you thought.
Mhm.
They're going to keep blooming, and they might have some stuff that are like, oh yeah, I saw that at 4, but they're going to have other stuff that's unique because they are unique to the world. And our role is to love, support them, provide for them, protect them, provide boundaries, give them a space to thrive. But they're not going to be our clones, right?
Mm.
And so we often need other professionals and books and people to talk to in order to help stretch us to create the space that our kiddos need to
Nice.
thrive, right? Because it's different than maybe the space we had, you know.
Right. Nice. All right. So this is what I do. I want to take a quick break. And if you don't mind, I would like to open up the lines and have, some questions. If anybody have any questions for you.
You bet.
All right. All right. It's your girl, D Goddess Nyomi Banks here on Ask Nyomi Bridget the Gap podcast. We're going to open up the lines. So we're going to take a break. But when the lines open, the number is 1-626-605-2756. That's 626-605. Ask Naomi. And we will be right back. We became really, really good friends. And when I say really, really good friends, like she's been through with me through my first marriage, through the birth of my kids. She like been there with everything as well as I had. But we had a breakdown. We had a breakdown in communication, in all of those things. And let me tell you, the breakdown came down is that where she had found out that she was diagnosed with brain cancer. And I remember, and every time she would call me or I would call her, I would speak with her and have very ups and encouraging words. But this one year, my grandmother had passed out of the blue, and I no longer had any. And at that moment, I felt like, where are my encouraging words for me? And I'm just going to be honest. And I kind of like disconnected from her because I felt she was draining my energy. And I don't think she was. I think what it was is that at that time, we needed each other and did not know how to help each other in that need.
Hey, this is Dog Pound Mike from Ask Naomi Bridging the Gap podcast. Come check us out every week. And remember, I'm no relationship expert. I just tell it like I hear it from the kennel. Get back at it.
Hey, my sexy people, it's your girl, the Goddess Naomi Banks. And I finally did it. I've written my first book. Well, actually, it's a living journal. It's called Good Morning, My Sexy People. Where I share my stories in different posts, but help a healing workbook for you. So it's 90 days to kick off your healing living journey. Pre-purchase now. Go to asknaomi.com and hit shop. Listen.
All right, it's your girl, D Goddess Naomi Banks here on Ask Naomi Bridget the Gap. Welcome back. And we still have Miss Dr. Tina Sellers with us. Hi.
Hi.
And Dog Pound Mike, how's it going over there?
All good. Learning a lot today.
You learning a lot today? You like this conversation? I mean, it's really, we get deep sometime on here at Ask Naomi. We really do. And then sometimes we just have a good old time, like truly a good time. For me, this is just nothing but just a light of confirmation for me on things here. So I am truly enjoying myself. And I see through the comments too that they're enjoying themselves and they have comments and things like that. But again, please don't be shy. If you guys have any questions for her, especially relating to the Shameless Parenting as well as the Sex God and the Conservative book, more of, bridging your gap or fusing your sexuality with your spirituality, give us a call at 626-605-2756. That's 625-605. Ask Naomi. You see, I get a little tongue-tied there. A little tongue-tied there. Okay, so while we was at a break, I was kind of looking at my questions. I didn't get all of my questions because I'm like, we need to be on here like for a good 3 or 4 hours. Because I'm getting a lot of education here myself. But what I want to ask you is, I know in your book, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to purchase the book myself, the hard copy. But are there any illustrations or anything in there in the book that kind of can help parents along that can't understand the wording, if that makes sense?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say there are some, but for the vast majority of it, I'm trying to explain things pretty carefully. And then I'm giving at the end of every chapter, so birth to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 6, at the end of every section, I'm saying, here are the top kiddo books to buy or get, and here are the top websites to get or go to, and here are the top parenting books to get on this section. And so I'm really trying to hold the hand. So I'm not trying to make the book exhaustive, but I'm saying, I've done the homework for you. And I'm
Right.
trying to even update it every 2 years and say, I have these books in my house right now. I have a almost 6-year-old and an almost 3-year-old granddaughters, and they have this stuff, because I really believe in it. I think it really supports parents and it helps kids. You don't have to create this all on your own. The other thing at the end of every chapter is there's a section for you to write down, what are your kiddos doing right now? What are
Right.
your questions right now? And so it becomes a little bit of a book that tells some of your story as your kids grow, which is kind of fun. It'll become a keepsake, hopefully, because you'll be able to put down those stories like, oh my gosh, today, da, 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 or I didn't know what to do when they asked this. And so I did this instead, or I went and got this, so we put that little amusing page at the end of every chapter. So hopefully it feels in the hands of people like, oh, I got Dr. Tina right here holding my hand. So
Yeah.
I can do this,
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So we're gonna jump back over here to the conservative, the sex guide and conservative book, right? Really, really quick. All right. So question: how can the conversations around sex and spirituality be approached within conservative churches to foster healthier perspectives and understanding?
So one of the things I would say is in the Sex, God, and Conservative Church, Erasing Shame from Sexual Intimacy from the book, one of the chapters, and I believe it's chapter 4, but I could be wrong as I don't have it right in front of me, but is a whole chapter on looking at the sex positive things that are in scripture, that are in the Bible that just weren't talked about. Because, when you're going to church, your pastor or minister is deciding what to share or what to preach on, right? And so there are things that were left out, and there's some wonderful things in there. I think I share about 8 different stories that are beautiful. They're sex positive. One of them is about what was called the vow of Ona, which is a vow that's actually taken by many conservative and Orthodox Jews. Even today, it's taught in Jewish day schools. And this is a guideline on how to be in relationship around sexuality, and it's all sex positive. Like literally, you could raise your kids on it. You could set your dating life to it. You could do your partnership to it. And it's things like all forms of sexual touch are recognized and valued. The purpose of all sexual touch is to reinforce the loving bond over the lifespan. The idea in the Torah that the elderly were not sexual just was not believed.
Mm.
They just believed that the Sabbath was a day you got a double blessing if you went in and loved each other, no matter how your bodies are running. And I've talked to plenty of people that are like, oh yeah, my parents disappeared in the afternoon on the Sabbath, and they grew up with some of these ideas. Sex is considered a woman's right and not a man's. The husband has a duty called the vow of Ona to ensure that all forms of sexual touch are pleasurable to her. He is to study her. Now, this is really a brilliant guideline, because in our culture where we give men all the rights to everything, and we tell women that they need to do what men want, then what ends up happening is that women take a while to get to midlife to be like, wait a minute, it's not about everybody else, it's about me too, right?
Right.
It takes men to midlife to get to the point that it's like, oh, it's not all about my work and my accomplishment. It's about my relationship. That's what's
Yeah.
making me happy. Well, when you raise a boy to pay attention to other, to learn to study other, that other is different from you.
Mm-hmm.
And you raise a girl to know that what you think and what you want is important. You've got to have voice about it. You need to make sure you're being treated with the kind of respect you deserve. Then what happens is you have men and women who are heterosexual in particular, who are going to find themselves seeking people much more emotionally intelligent in their 30s rather than having to wait until they're in their 40s and 50s. So this isn't just wonderful in the way that it sounds in the Western world, because women aren't often given that privilege and men are often told to just do whatever they want. It is brilliant because it actually helps you emotionally, spiritually, sexually mature in a way that that lends itself to a much better relationship, a much more egalitarian, mutual. We can talk, we can share with each other. I know me, I can share me with you. You know how to listen, and it's so people are thriving much sooner rather than on their second families, which often we'll see, right? So there's about 10 different guidelines there, and it's all from scripture, right?
Right.
It just hasn't been brought forward. So I say to people, go do your homework, go read that stuff, and then start a small group where
Yeah.
you talk about this together with people that you go to church with. What would it like to embody this in your own life? What would it be like to teach this to your children? How do you feel about it? How is this different than what you were taught growing up? That kind of thing.
Right. Thank you for that. I mean, that is for me, I come from a very religious background, as I said before, and actually it will be a year. I'm gonna tell you this story that I truly witnessed a miracle. My auntie Jackie, who is also my godmother, she had a stroke about over 10 years ago.
Mm.
And she was paralyzed, like she wasn't able to walk for 10 years. Like, in the most that she was able, it was like one of those walker things that you walk, but she was shaking, so it wasn't.
Hmm.
She wasn't walking.
Yeah.
About 2, 3. My mother's 70th birthday, she was here, and she had came in the kitchen with her little walker thing cushion, and she anointed me. She started speaking, all I've never been anointed before, and she didn't even remember what she said to me, but she said some things to me. She said, "I know you don't think you're a preacher, you're a pastor." I said, "No, I'm a speaker. I'm helping people. That's not what I am." But she was speaking in it to me. Last year around this time, she had gave me a phone call, and she said God came to me and he spoke to me and he told me that he was going to have me walk in 48 hours. And I'm like, "Really?" She said, "Yes." She said, told me to call several different people to have a witness of me telling you this. And then he told me there was some scriptures that I needed to read, and there was some songs that I needed to read, and then I needed to get some couple of people a group to and pray. Now, this happened on the 28th. That is my baby's birthday. That happened on the 28th when he came to it. I was on a Thursday. So let me tell you how crazy amazing this is. My mom just lost her brother a few weeks before that. All right. His going away, his funeral, his going away was on the 30th. That is the day that God promised my auntie that she will walk. That Saturday morning, she got, and mind you, I had a big celebration because I turned 50 last year. So I had a big wall white celebration party, celebration of life party. So I couldn't go back home to Chicago for it because I had people flying into Las Vegas for this event. So I was feeling some type of way because I wasn't there. And so at a moment I was sitting in my living room and I was, had this emotion of crying. And I left my phone upstairs and someone said, "Go get your phone." So I went to go get my phone. Now, this is 2 days later after she told me about it. It's a video of her walking with the stroller. And when I mean walking, it was like he told her to walk up and down. I think she said 10 times walk, and then she let it go. And it was a different walk. It was like, when I say she was dancing and she was jumping and like the Holy Ghost, like I literally saw a miracle, like not the ones that's in the Bible, but it was like, to me, it said, "Okay, go."
Yeah.
That was the sign for me to just go, go. Now, that was her first miracle. So I had her on the panel to speak about, the healing of spirituality and sexuality. And then we get a call that she has been diagnosed with cancer.
Mm.
Yes, and during that week of the, of my event, she couldn't come because they were doing testing and they was going to start doing the surgery for her.
Mm.
And so, we all prayed about it. She even, sent a prayer and she sent a message, to the audience and stuff like that. And she doesn't have cancer anymore. We're right, she's good right now. Now we get ready to celebrate next week, actually next week, her 1 year anniversary of her walking. And but she has been through a lot of trials and tribulations throughout that, because it's like when the enemy knows that you are one of God's special people, when you are, really supposed to be out there being your testimony and helping healing in a certain way, they're going to come at you in any kind of way, possible. So what I'm saying this to say to you is that I thank you for continuing on your journey to write those books, because that is something that is very much needed in this world. People don't understand how much healing that you really, this is a broken world.
Yes.
And there's a lot of hurt out here, and we are hurting each other with,
Yes.
with words and things, with all kinds of things. There's several books that I've been reading throughout my life, and one of the ones is the Four Agreements is words are magic.
Mhm.
And so you definitely have to use your words wisely.
Mhm.
We never knew that we were actually, the words that we say, we were actually what they say, black magic on each other.
Mhm.
Putting that self-doubt in each other. And I was just speaking to my sister, and I was telling her, with this word that we say, the B word. I
Mhm.
just said it, but it's the B word. And I said, well, you say no, we are no longer broken.
Yeah. Mhm.
Unbroken. That is what we say, unbroken. And it's
Broken.
yeah, unbroken.
Mhm.
And so I guess from now on, I'm gonna say we want to be in an unbroken world.
Yes, we do. We do.
In an unbroken world. But I just had to share that with you. To just blessing us here on this platform here. And as we could, and I want you back. I want you back. I want you traveling with me, girl. We're gonna be traveling together, holding hands and speaking. Yes, we are. I am claiming it and claiming it. But I do. If you will talk to some of my BTG crews, they're very great people. They are, and they're all looking to help each other. We were put on this world to truly serve one another. We really
Right.
were.
Yeah.
Really were. And everyone different path, in life. It somewhere comes where we are bridging that gap. And we just gotta get, all of those folks that are definitely not in the unbroken moment or trying to get there, and they
Yeah.
allow those egos out the way, that we can move that. And
Mhm.
so in saying this, I want to, start to open up the lines. Okay, Dr. Mike?
Okay, we're all good.
All right, so here we go.
We're gonna go and take a phone call first.
Okay. All right, ask Naomi. Hello.
Hello again, Naomi.
Hey, how are
This is
you?
it's good. This is Joseph calling to talk to you and Dr. Tina Sellers. I have just one question about this topic.
Hmm.
Author, Shameless Parenting, Sex, Gun, and Conservative Not Church. When you talk about this, are you talking about what if the shameless parenting occurred in some sinister, like a cult? I'm only asking this because I've been watching some of these crazy cult documentaries that include Branch Davidian, include parents beating their children in the name for God, and because they said God told them to do this, while their leader David Koresh has their sexual ways with all the women in the group. That and another cult that was involved in sex trafficking called NXIVM, NXIVM.
Okay, so your question is and I'm just and tell me if I'm wrong. So your question is how within that book, with the shameless parenting as well as sex, God, and the conservative church, are you asking in those two books, would that be a helping of healing for that, or are you asking if that's something like
Uh,
that?
Healing those that might have been involved in these
Yeah.
disturbing cults
Mm-hmm.
like Nix,
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
one I mentioned, and XIDM and the Branch Davidians, and or
Mm-hmm.
you think they're beyond help?
No, I love that you asked that question, Joseph. Thanks so much for calling in. People who have suffered extreme religious abuse, and sexual abuse within that even, are going to have deep traumatic wounds, are likely to have PTSD and other kinds of effects of being treated that way. The Sex, God, and Conservative Church book will help provide some understanding and scaffolding.
Well,
Cults are a little bit different because
you're breaking up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Cults are a little bit different in that they also then kind of go into extreme directions. So this is going to be a little bit more the general evangelical Christian church of the United States. But there is going to be things in there that are going to be helpful. I've had people read this book who come from cult backgrounds and have found it very helpful and a launching pad to their healing process. And they go on to do other things. The Shameless book helps them not rely on their background to do their parenting, but gives them another sort of way to have someone hold their hand and help them write a new legacy with their kids rather than passing down what was hurtful from them. So I think both books are helpful. They are one thing in a whole line of things that are often needed to heal from really traumatic backgrounds. Thank you for that question, Joseph.
All right. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, it's your girl, D-Goddess Naomi Banks here on Ask Naomi, Bridging the Gap. Our lines are open. Give us a call at 626-605-2756. I am here with the beautiful and talented Miss Tina Sellers. She is a bestseller for Shameless Parenting as well as Sex, God, in the Conservative Church. So if you guys have any questions right here, this is the best time to ask. We're opening up the lines. Let's go.
Okay, we're going to take a streamer here.
All right. Hey, Mask Man.
How you doing?
I'm well.
Okay. Y'all talked about a lot of stuff. Talked about self-hatred, religious shame.
Mm-hmm.
You said something, Naomi, that really touched me. You can't have faith in God without having faith in yourself.
Yes.
That really touched me right there when you said that. So I don't know. Question. You talked about finding a good community.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that. I believe in that. I believe that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to find a good community to be a part of. You talked about masturbation, pre-verbal masturbation and post-verbal masturbation. So since you talked about masturbation, when do you think it's okay for a parent to allow their child to watch the adult film industry? When does that come in? Because most people started watching before they were 18. I know I did.
Yeah, sure. Oh, that's for sure. Yeah. Well, I'm just gonna say, and can I get your name?
Mr. Mask Man, but my family name is Edward.
Okay. Which would you like for me to call you?
Either or. It's your world.
All right. All right. So I'll call you Edward. So when most kids discover or find pornography, their parents don't know yet. They're finding it first, right? And so it's really, I think, a question of once the parents discover, if they didn't start talking about it with them beforehand, once the parents discover that a child has gone searching and found things, then I think it's important to have a conversation about just the adult industry. You know, what parts of the adult industry honor the actors, honor the people that are involved, leave them with choice and safety and food and, protection and all that. And what parts of the adult industry exploit, traffic, take advantage, whatever, because it really often comes down to what are your values as a family. And most families, when I'm talking to them, they're like, we want our kids to not exploit people. We want our kids to honor people. So it's then helping them understand the bigger adult industry and then saying, if you want to be a part of the adult industry in some way, let's talk about the ways that are honoring, don't exploit. People have choice. People are, able to say how they, what they want to do and what they don't want to do, go in those directions, and you may have to pay for it, but go in those directions so that you can feel good in integrity inside yourself. And also, that's the one big thing to talk about. The second one is, let's understand that adult entertainment is entertainment. It's not the real world. And so I wouldn't recommend you scaling a building like Spider-Man or driving like Fast and Furious, but we can enjoy those things, right?
Yeah.
But we're not going to use pornography as our sex educator, because it's not going to necessarily make you a good lover. And I really want you to grow up and be a good lover and a good receiver. And so we help them understand what's the difference between entertainment and reality, so we can help them thrive.
Okay.
How's that sound?
That sounds reasonable. Sounds reasonable.
Reasonable.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that beautiful question, Edward. I loved it. It was great.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Have a good one. All right. Bye-bye. All right, it's your girl, D Goddess Naomi Banks here on I Ask Naomi Bridging the Gap podcast. Oh, Dr. Tina Sellers, that was a great response. Marvelous.
Thank you.
It really was. And it's so funny because in the book, I heard you say something about porn and whatever. I was like, huh. But I got it. I got it. And especially when you just said it now, you broke it down. You were able to break it down, because some people will look at it for an educational reason, or even to make their relationships better. But that's watching it responsible. You understand what I'm saying? And I like the way that you broke it down, to that. For me, and I think one of the questions that he did ask is about the age. For me, and I used to get it. Sometimes I don't think, people should be in the industry until they're 21, until they're of legal age, to have those experience. And I guess I say because I didn't get into it until I was 30 years old, so I was a grown woman. And did I learn a lot about myself sexually? Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I truly did. And I feel that there are some things and some content out there that is very exploiting, in that matter. And I wanted to say it's in every industry, but particularly in the adult industry. But to say this is the industry, it has its hiccups like every other. But I can honestly say I've met a lot of good people that are in the industry. And I hate that it gets such a bad rap. There are so many phenomenal, educated people that has great spirits and, that are in there. And man.
Yeah. And many people that are involved in healing too.
Yeah.
And where do we talk about that? We don't talk about that. But there are many people in the adult industry that are healing other people that are afraid to go out and date, actually, or whatever. And I've heard some remarkable stories in my life, talked to some remarkable people, and I'm like, we need to get this out there. Like, people need to understand, what is hurtful and what isn't hurtful. What's actually healing,
Exactly. That was a good question. That was a good one.
Yes,
all right, we have somebody else. Let's go.
Yeah, we're blowing up here. We're gonna go to Rock Hard on the string.
All right, hey, Rock Hard.
Hey, what's going on? What's happening? How y'all doing?
We're good. We're good.
All
So
right.
your question.
Yeah, I want to know. I have two actually, and I was thinking about a friend. We was going through a celibacy stage. She was she was saying she was celibate and she just wanted to stay single and stay to herself. But Naomi, I do fitness training. So one time we was training in the gym, and she wanted me to take these crazy pictures of her. And it's like she said it, like she actually said it bluntly, like, yeah, I want to set up thirst traps for Instagram. So that let me know it's like she gets like some type of pleasure from attention. So I want to know, in y'all opinions, would y'all consider that still celibate? Because it's like she's still getting a pleasure from attention through social media, So she's getting like some type. She getting her. I'm trying to be professional, but she getting her rocks off through attention, in my opinion.
Mhm.
So would you say that's celibate, or that's just me looking into it too much?
Well, you know, there's a part of me that wants to say, rock hard, I love that question. And do we need to label that? Like, do we need to know? You know, like,
Because it's like the pictures she was taking, those crazy pictures, and it's like you
yeah,
sitting here saying single life, single life, single life, posting these pictures, but you know you got an inbox full of guys trying to get at you. So it's like, is that really celibate? Because it's like, oh,
yeah,
you're looking at me, and you're getting aroused through that. So do that
right.
count?
Well, I guess I just sort of wonder about what is it about the celibacy that she was wanting? Was it the safety? Was it the choice? Was it having things entirely in a box where she can control it and she's not going to get exploited or hurt in some way? And she didn't feel like she could do that out in the world with real touch, right?
Mm.
You know, like with real touch, man, I'm with people that are, 50, 60 pounds heavier than I am. I don't draw boundaries really well on my own, like whatever, but somehow over here, I can play with my power. I can play with my beauty. I can play with attention, and I'm safe. I get to decide what happens. And, you know, I it is a particular kind of celibacy, but it's also working with lots of other gifts that she has. So it might have been sort of a safe way to be sort of sexual for her.
So that's kind of like a 50-50 answer, what I got. That wasn't really a yes or no answer.
Oh,
Right. I think I actually would, and this is of course the therapist in me, I would be asking them, like, tell me how this is celibacy for you.
Okay.
I would want to know from them.
mm.
Yeah. I'm not super interested in labeling people myself.
All right, nah, that's fair. Makes sense.
She put you in the friend zone, didn't she? You ain't like that, did you? Especially you had to be on the opposite side of the camera taking
No,
those that
no,
picture.
no, 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 Naomi. I'm professional in my craft, so it's like if I train you, it's like that's the boundary. It's like
Okay.
I never try to talk to any of my clients. I never try to hook up with any of my peoples. So once like we establish I'm your trainer and you're my client, like even the gym that I work at, that's a rule. Like you can't hook up with none of the people you're training with because that's bad for business. So
Right.
trust me, Naomi, it wasn't no friend zone, nothing like that. It's a boundary of I'm your trainer and you want to get in shape. Trust me.
Well, maybe she was just, promoting, you help her get that bomb body that was thirst trap.
No, Naomi. She said it from word for word. I want to set up thirst traps. She said it.
Okay.
She said it word for word, just like that.
Mhm.
And that's when it clicked. Like, hold on, like I think you starting to get off a little bit on this attention because you got a hella guys in your inbox trying to get at you, and it's like you're enjoying telling them no.
Yeah.
But so that's why I went like, is that celibacy?
Yeah. And maybe this is a learning. It would be interesting. I could imagine that having enough experiences where you're saying no and drawing boundaries, maybe you then become brave enough to enter out into the world. I don't know.
Mm.
All right. No, this is my second question. I don't have kids, so it's like I truly didn't know like this answer or like so that's why I want to ask y'all. But I know a person and she's in the streets, like she's outside for real. And I wanted to know like as a parent, if you have like a daughter who's like just getting with any and everybody, like how do you approach that or like how do you have that conversation with your child if you see it's like these signs of like you're acting real horse. I was trying not to say it, I'm sorry, but it's like you acting horse, you outside. So
Yeah.
it's like as a parent, like how do you have that conversation? Or
Yeah.
is there necessary for a conversation?
Well, yeah, if the child is already old enough to be making decisions like that, with or without you, then you have to honor that that's the reality they are. But you can have conversations where you say, I'm noticing this, it scares me. And I'm wondering if you're caring for yourself. Like it seems like you're treating your body as if it's something that you can give away or throw away. And it worries me because I see you as precious.
Mhm.
And I want to know what I can do to support you. I'm wanting to understand you better. And I'm wanting just to help and be there, not to shame you in it, but I have this desire for you to be treated well, like a goddess, and to be loved, to be seen, known, loved, and accepted. And from where I stand, that's not happening for you. And it scares me and it worries me. So you have those kinds of conversations with them. If you try to come down hard on them, what happens is they go underground and they're going to do it anyway. And they're often will be more dangerous in the way that they do it. So I think being vulnerable and honest with them is the way to go once they're adolescents.
Right. It's something that I want to say too is, and I want to make sure that you don't come from a judging point of view, point of view with it. And why I say that is because, I mean, that's not your child, so you don't know what their language or their conversation was on her being sexually confident in who she is and in who she was. So as for you to say, okay, she's out there whoring, that's from your point of view. You don't know that conversation or the things that she had within herself or with parents or with it, even with that person who she decides to have that sexual encounter with. This is where we have to stop monitoring other people's bodies and their body counts because of what we feel, what we want them to do. That's where that healthy with sexuality has to come in with that, and it comes with healing with that. I mean, and that's what my note on it. And I am speaking with this from experience because even though I was 30 years old when I got into the industry, and I even told my story on when I got into the industry, but I'm still labeled as something. You understand? Not that I was a grown woman, just divorced with kids, and I understand my body and my sexuality, and I choose to do things just as sex workers. But you will put this negative stigma on them because they are doing something that you feel is not appropriate for a woman. Yet, as a man, you will do the same thing, but you're not called a hoe. You're not called any of those. So
Well,
we have to
actually,
be very. Wait. Let me finish. But we have to be very careful on when we speak on that or have that conversation with that. So I agree with some of Dr. Tina Sellers is saying with even that conversation, because I know those are conversations that I had with my daughter, and I was raw with it. Don't you ever let a man talk you out of your draws. I'm just speaking like that. This is something that you want to do, and don't feel that you are peer pressure into doing any of those things. And that's owning her sexuality, or who her sexual being, who she is, period. And in that of her doing that, she can still be as precious as she want to, and not get that validation from somebody else.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
it does.
Hmm.
And you said something. I just want to make mention, like you said, like a dude don't get considered called a hoe. Like, nah, it ain't no one way street. Like that's both sides, in my opinion. Like if you got high boy or girl, if you got high body count, you got a high body count. Like
Okay.
don't discriminate on because you're a female, you're a male. Like literally, like I asked the girl this, and we just playing around, and I was like, babe, would you be mad if I started doing porn? And she looked at me and was like, would you be mad if I started doing porn? And it was like,
What was your answer?
I didn't answer it.
Oh, I
It
bet.
was like, yeah.
I bet.
It was like, she was like, would you like it if I was out in the street just selling pussy? Like, oh,
Okay, we got to bleep that.
but nah,
Hey, Black Heart, it's always good, baby. It's
you
always
already
thank
know. I
you.
appreciate y'all, and y'all have a blessed one. Thank
You too.
y'all.
Thank you.
All right, now that was one, wasn't it? That was one, wasn't it, Dr.
Yeah.
Tina?
Yeah, that was awesome. That was great.
It's real and uncut here on Ask Naomi sometimes.
But I love my BTG crew. I love that they are very open to sharing, some things. And what I do like is I don't know if you're able to see a lot of the comments that you have. They kind of have conversations between each other. And I
Okay.
mean, yeah, they go. And I love
You're
it.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it, how they go. I mean, we have fans from all over
Love it.
the country. And actually we're gonna go to one that we have from London.
Yes,
London. All right. Hello, Brush.
Hey guys, first and foremost, thank you for this episode. It's been a riveting conversation, and I could probably do with a part two at some point. You guys managed to cover so much today.
Yeah.
My question is, well, you mentioned how technology's moved on in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
We're in a day and age now where everything's connected, right? There are some statistics over here, especially where now the youngest age at which a child is, privy to or first sees material that's inappropriate is 10 years old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So in that kind of society, depending on the level of conservatism as well of some of these people, how do we even get them to open up and have these honest conversations with young people?
And Brush, that is the $1 million question. I tell you what, I think I ask that question every day, and that's part of why I'm still very much in the conversation, just like Nyomi is, because there, in the conservative world, what we're seeing is the exact opposite of what is actually protective of children. You withdraw information.
Yep.
Let media teach them, and you're not saying anything.
And like you touched on, Dr. Sellers, with the example of the movie industry,
right.
Nobody watches a Fast and Furious movie and thinks it's reasonable to drive out of one building into another.
Right.
So if they're seeing a 20-minute edited video of adult content, which their minds are not ready for,
No.
with no background information, that it's a job like any other, that there's a 24-hour day shoot that goes into this. There's nothing sexy about this, really, when you break it down. And they don't have that information. Like, who's going to be there to teach them reality, between reality and fiction?
Well, and if you think about it, if we've got kids exposed between 9 and 10, and I talk about this in the Shameless book, there are conversations we have to be having at 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're actually building on things. We're building on things on body autonomy. We're building on diversity. We're building on boundaries, and we're building on voice and what a good friend is, on so many things, so that when they're 8 and 9, we can start talking about, when we're watching TV, what is fantasy, what is reality? And we're talking about that. We're talking about what marketing is, and who is that advertisement for? Who isn't it for? Who is included?
Exactly. I think capitalism plays a big part in all of this.
Yeah. But that then lays the stage, that lays the groundwork for having conversation about the adult industry, right? And what is out there. And gosh, when you go to your friend's house, or somebody might have a tablet, and you might see something that is actually what we would call adult content, and your body and your mind may not be ready for it. Let's talk a little bit.
Listen, Dr. Sellers, I'm 36 years old. I've come across some stuff over the last decade that I didn't think I was ready for.
Yeah.
let alone the youth of today. So I really worry for the younger generation.
I do. Yeah, I do too. And when kids see some, like you were saying, kids see some things, it can actually really frighten them. And it can be a form of sexual abuse, in that their little minds didn't have a chance to get there on its own, on their own. Instead, somebody inserted it into them, and they're a little confused, shocked. They have overwhelming emotional system, right? It's acting like a little bit like trauma within them. What they need to know is, baby, if you ever see anything or hear anything that just doesn't sit right, you come tell me, because we can talk about it. I don't want you to be worried, hurt, scared, whatever. There's stuff out there that's just very different than what happens in our family, but I don't wish parenting actually on anybody. It's a really hard time to be parenting, and we have not prepared parents well for what they actually need skill-wise in order to have their children be both informed, equipped, and protected, right?
Very much so. I mean, I don't have children myself, but I am a proud uncle. So, one of them 17 and the other one's 14. So at each stage, I make sure to have certain conversations with them, just sort of gauge things and where their mind is at,
Yeah.
I'll give you an example with my nephew. Like, we enjoy watching all the Marvel movies. In this day and age, in the Marvel universe, they like to be inclusive. So they'll show you different kinds of relationships and whatnot. So in one of the movies we were watching, 1 or 2 years ago, there was a scene where there was a same-sex couple, and I thought, oh, this is a good opportunity for me to, pause this and explain to my nephew that, yo, this is what's going on. But I was very taken aback by him, actually. He was like, yeah, I know, Unc.
I
Some
know
people
that.
have 2 mums, some people have 2 dads. And he just turned around and carried on.
Yeah. And that right there is a beautiful example, Brush, of actually where kids are in comparison to where adults are.
Hmm.
Kids are coming home and saying, gosh, at 10, 11,
Yeah.
I think I'm non-binary and pansexual.
Mm.
And their parents are like, I have no idea what you just said. It's just, blowing me away. And but the kids are talking amongst themselves.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
this is another reason why we just need to really help parents get on
Oh,
board.
and in this day and age, Dr. Sellers, there's a lot to learn. Like there's so many different terms and things. Like sometimes we have to Google stuff.
Yes.
One of my friends, his daughter came out to him as pansexual, and we both just looked at each other. I was like, "Well, yo, what? Is she into
Exactly.
frying pans? Is she into cooking? What kind of fetish is this?" We had to look it up so that we could understand. So that when we responded to her, it's from a place of understanding, or at least trying to be.
Right, exactly. But good for you for taking the time to get the information versus reacting.
Yeah.
I mean, I
You
think
know
so
what it
many
is, though,
parents
Dr.
are just
Sellers?
like,
It's because I saw myself going through that. When I was his age, my parents wouldn't have even addressed that. They would have sat there silently and just kept it moving.
that's right. So good job by you, for sure.
Yeah,
Thanks
listen,
so much
we're always
for calling in.
constantly learning, aren't we? So yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, we
But
are.
thank you very much, guys, and big up Mike as well in the back. I'll
All
be
right.
back in the
Thank
chat.
you, Brush.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Take
Have a
care.
good weekend. All right. All right, guys, it's your girl, the Goddess Nyomi Banks, here with Dr. Tina Sellers, as well as Dog Pound Mike. We've been having great conversations. This conversation has been truly amazing. It really has. It really, really has. I know we have a few more calls. We have one more caller.
We got one more.
We got one more caller. One more caller. You ready?
Okay.
All right, ask Nyomi who's calling.
Hey, this is Sissy Boy. How's it going?
It's good. I'm good.
Hey, yeah, I really enjoyed the show tonight, and Miss Tina, just really talking about accepting people and teaching kids about that. What do you feel the role of sex education is in public schools?
Well, what we know from the countries that have been thriving for years, which is Holland, Sweden, Denmark, Iceland, Norway, they have had comprehensive, medically accurate life education. They don't just call it sex education, it's life education. And it's woven into every subject from kindergarten all the way to the end. And so you're talking about all the things that have to do with attachment and good, strong relationships in life. And so there are aspects that you teach about that when kids are 5, and other aspects when they're 6, and other aspects when they're 7. That's what, if you want the very finest, quote unquote, sex education, that's what it looks like. It's life education, it's relationship education. It's all about how to thrive relationally in a culture, and you're teaching it through all the different subjects as they're growing up. Right now, I believe we have in the United States only 18 states that require medically accurate sex education, and not all of it is comprehensive. 18 out of 50. So we've got states that continue to teach abstinence education, which is 80% medically inaccurate. So what we're doing to those kids is scaring them and hurting them and ill-equipping them to be able to protect themselves in the world, versus when you provide kids with what they need around relationships at every age, they become equipped. They are able to tell their friends. They're able to know when somebody's trying to pull something over on them, and they are a very different child with regard to their confidence in themselves and their ability to give strong relationships. There was one study that I read, this was several years ago, and I believe that this was in Sweden, where they asked people who were sexually active if they how they would describe the type of relationships that they're sexually active in, 95% of the people who responded in the survey said that the relationships they were in were caring and loving. You're not going to find that here in the States.
Mhm.
And that's because they were equipped to choose loving and caring relationships. You know, whether those relationships were one night stands or whether they were relationships that had gone on for a while, they were loving and caring. You know, they weren't like using and manipulative. So, if I had my way, we would have that kind of education across the board in America, because I know our kids would be equipped and confident, and it's what I want for them and I want for their families, frankly, too.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sissy Boy, for that question. That was an awesome one. Appreciate that.
That was good. Thank you. Thank you for calling in.
Mhm.
Thank you. Have a good one. All right, guys. It's your girl, D Goddess Naomi Banks here on Ask Naomi Bridging the Gap podcast. This has been truly an amazing show. I truly want to thank you, Dr. Sellers, for coming on and sharing your wisdom. It's been great. It truly has. And if you have any last words of encouragement to my BTG crew or anyone out there that's listening, on podcast, please do
Yeah,
share.
I would say you keep following this woman, Naomi. She is got your back and she wants you to thrive in the world. And I'm just so grateful you had me. This was just a wonderful time to talk about things that are really important to all of our well-being
Yeah.
and health and wellness. So I'm grateful to have been here. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. Again, guys, if you want to, I say go get this book, both of them. Truly, truly great books. You guys, I haven't been messing with you on these books now. I've been telling y'all all about these books. So go get the book. The one of them is Shameless Parenting, especially those that are parents right now. And you have those little boys and little girls, and you want to have the right language to be able to speak to them. Go check that book out, as well as Sex, God, and the Conservative Church. I know a lot of times we battle with our spirituality and sexuality and wondering if this is something that we should be doing sexually, and is giving us the right tools. She has all of that in there. And when I say the words that she speak are very compassionate, and it's empathy behind her words. So I, really, and I'm glad that even before you guys even had a chance to read it, that you can really look and feel her energy and her personality and know that that is the same energy and personality in those words behind in that book. All right. All right. All right, Tina Sellers. Again, thank you. We have to keep in touch. We really
Yeah,
do.
I would love that. I would absolutely love that.
Yeah, we
Thank
really
you
do.
so
So,
much for reaching out. I thank the universe for bringing us together. That was really lovely.
yes, thank you. Thank you. Yes, you were my picture on my so
That's
thank
hilarious.
you. Again. Have a beautiful weekend. I thank you
Thanks.
so much.
Thanks, Tony. You too.
All right. Good
Bye.
night. All right, girl, guys. It's your girl, the Goddess Naomi Banks here on Ask Naomi Bridging the Gap podcast. Dog Pound Mike, this was a really great show.
Great show, great show, good information.
Yeah, it really was. And I'm gonna be very candid with you guys. I always tell you guys anyway. Yeah, let me tell you something. When the opening of the show with y'all, I already pray anyway before I get on this screen. I already pray anyway. But I did an extra prayer while you guys were probably looking at the openings. I was sitting here with my eyes closed like this, and I was praying to God. And what I said is, because I've always spoke about God being energy and God being within all of us. And sometimes when I ask, my prayer is always to lessen me and increase you within me. And that lessen me is to remove my ego, remove my pride, open up my ears and my third eye. And what that means is that you listen and you hear things that are important in life that can help build you and others. Y'all understand what I'm saying? So in that case is what I'm saying here. I want to thank all of you all for coming in and being on your best behavior, because we did have company here, and we're gonna try to make her a nice little fixture. We're gonna have her come back again and again and again. But again, if you guys have not signed up for that course right now, that I have is discovering your inner bliss. It's the journey on falling in love with self. And this is a part of it too, is knowing who you are and healing yourself within so you can be able to have those words and be open up to have those words with your children or with other people on your sexuality and your spirituality. It kind of gets you to where you know who you are and not a validation of others. So you can go to the link asknaomi.com and it's in the Elevate Me page right there. So I mean, I'm on a high right now. Y'all know that thing is like I am on a spiritual high right now. Y'all want some? I definitely is. It was just so amazing. After I'm gonna give me a glass of wine, I'm not gonna play with y'all. I'm gonna go outside in a pool and probably be skinny dipping in a minute. But I thank you all for your continuous support here at Ask Naomi Bridging the Gap podcast. I thank my partner in crime right here, a dog pound Mike.
Yep.
Again to you BTG crew, to the Elements for always, having my back and giving me some amazing music. Period. All right. So as I always say, be good to one another in yourselves and always keep it sexy. Good night. Hey, it's the goddess Naomi Banks. And I hope you enjoyed that last episode of Ask Naomi Bridging the Gap. And if you did, please like, subscribe, press that notification button, as well as comment. I'll see you next week. Keep it sexy. Ask Naomi Bridging the Gap. This is where we talk about love, sex, relationships, cultural differences, and so much more.